Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to We Have a Take the What podcast. I am Tara Bowen Biggs, joined by Rose Harding. Hello, Rose.
Good morning, Tara. How are you?
Well, it is daylight savings time or not daylight savings time or whatever. It's that day where the clocks change. And so, of course, I'm a little out of sorts, not sure what time it is, but also thank God for all this like automatic updating of phones and everything. Like,
Yes.
I can confidently look at my phone and know what time it is. I can't confidently look at the phone on the stove or the coffee maker, but I got my phone and I'm always going to know it's the right time.
It's so funny you said that because my daughter has one of those alarm clocks that like changes colors when it's okay for her to get up in the morning. I don't know if you've seen these.
Oh, no.
So yeah, you set it to like a certain time and then it goes from like red at night to green, so it means it's okay for you to get up.
Interesting.
And it's left over from when she was younger and couldn't tell time because she wouldn't be able to look at the clock and know if it was okay for her to get up. But she woke me up this morning and she goes, "Mom, the clock is confused." Because it says it's not morning, but it looks like morning. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I need to change her clock. And so
I
thank you for that
love
reminder.
the clock is confused. That's such a great description of it. Well, so we are recording this the day after the Blazers beat the Toronto Raptors. They also, like last week, won 2 games in a row against Memphis. Like, but wins are just like it's raining wins basically in Rip City right now.
Yes.
Like in
Three
general, how are you
wins.
feeling? Yeah.
I feel pretty good, honestly, because so I will say some of those losses, some of the most recent losses feel like good losses
Hmm.
because I'll say I went to the Houston Rockets game, which was on Friday night, so the night before the Raptors game, and like they played until the very end. They had the lead after the third quarter. Like Houston, which is like a pretty good team, like they had to play their starters right up until the end. And they were playing against guys that were like, some of them were like, I mean, I'll say most of them were not in the NBA a year ago, between them being rookies or two-way guys or whatever. Like, so like the fact that those guys took like Fred Van Vliet and like Dylan Brooks and those guys to the very end is to me like a win in my book.
Yeah, I was thinking about it today when, one of the things that we've been searching for years, really, even when Damian Lillard was on the team, was basically since we got this coach, is what's the identity of this team? And I was thinking, I'm like, I'm not saying that we know the identity of the team right now, but I feel like I'm getting closer to understanding. And right now, the identity is like, don't give up. Like they don't give up, except for, rarely. But they really, it's fun. And the young guys are trying to prove themselves with defense and through hustle. And I that's not an identity, but it's a trend that I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, I mean, so I will say that there was like a long period of time for me as a Blazer fan where I would be like, "Oh my God, we need a big stop right here or this game is over." And I'll say it never really felt like that was that possible
Hmm.
most of the time. Like every now and then it would happen and it would be the most amazing thing I've ever seen. But like, you know how like Blazers fans for a long time, we'd be down by like 15 with like 3 minutes to go, and we'd be like, we could still be back in this because
Oh,
we have Damian Lillard.
even before that, like, we're down 20 in the fourth quarter. We got Terry Porter and Clyde Drexler. No problem.
Yeah, there was just like this air about the way our expectations were around offense. We were like, we can close any gap in a very small amount of time. So I never felt that way on defense. I'm like, oh, we need one stop, or this game is over. Like, forget it. That's not happening. I hope they miss. Like that was what like my hope was. It was like the most likely thing is that this player just somehow misses and not that we actually get a stop. But like now when it comes down to like situations where I'm like, we need to stop right here so badly, I always feel like it's possible, which is not something that I am used to feeling as a Blazer fan because we just haven't been very defense focused this whole time.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And also we're not so sure that we're going to be able to make that last bucket, but we're feeling pretty confident that it's possible at least to make that stop. We don't have to like pray anymore, but like, and just like put it like in faith in the universe. Now we actually have enough like solid evidence that these guys are capable and have been
Yeah.
capable.
I think the turning point for me was probably that game-winning block that Tamani Kamara had. Do you remember that block? And right after he got that block, like Malcolm Brogdon chest bumped him into another dimension. But after that, I was like, oh my God, we can get a game-winning stop. Which
Mhm.
I always felt like the Blazers, if they were going to get a game-winning anything, it's a game-winning bucket that's from like Narnia. But
Mhm.
it's not a game-winning block. Those things just didn't happen for us. And now I'm like, oh, we can get those now. Or a game-winning steal. Like, I don't know. It just feels like the upside down world right now.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's fun to watch. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just for years, everyone would be like, "Oh, I just love watching defense," and I'd be like, "Yeah, you're just saying that because it's cool to say that you like defense." And then, like, now that I'm actually seeing defense, I'm like, "Oh, I can kind of see what people were," because it's been so long since I'd seen defense, and I was just like, "Yeah, yeah, you're just like saying that."
You're tricking
Um,
yourself into thinking that it's fun to watch because your team isn't as good as offense.
but now I'm like, "Oh, it actually is fun to watch defense now that I've like actually laid eyes on it."
Totally. Like, and I know that you got really last year, you got really into athletic rebounds, like athletic rebounds galore now.
I love rebounding more and more as time goes by. I wish you got something for it. I mean, I know what you get is the possession of the ball, which is good.
Yes.
But I just don't think people get recognition for being really good at rebounding. And I mean, I don't know.
Isn't that Andre Drummond's whole career though? Is that he's a good rebounder? Everybody knows him as that guy who rebounds everything.
Yeah, but you don't, there's like no award for it. We should give an award next year for best rebounder.
Oh, we should. That is that is one that also like nobody's doing for sure. We can definitely do that. And also, like we are already paying attention to athletic rebounding right now.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
just numbers, but like quality.
Yeah, I like that because we're never gonna, have enough data for best dunker. But I told you I'm out on dunks?
No, wait.
Okay,
What? You're out on dunks and you're
I
in on what?
rebounds.
Oh, got
I'm
it.
out on dunks. Dunks are gaudy and they are showy offy and they are, very like me, look at me, I'm dunking. So I've decided that I'm out on dunks to protect my heart mostly. And I'm trying to like inverse, what do you call it? The psychology of the universe into
Reverse
like,
psychology.
yes, I'm trying to reverse psychology of the universe into just like hailing me with dunks. So part one of that is saying I am out on dunks. Don't even talk to me about dunks. I haven't even been keeping track of dunks for like months because, who cares? I don't care about dunks. The fact that the Blazers had 7 dunks last night and DeAndre Ayton had 5 dunks, I don't even care. Not even looking at that. I'm just like, I'm out on dunks.
Okay. So this is like a little bit sour grapes, but also a little bit like protect your heart. Like you have to get into something else that we do and we do well, and you're going to be able to like see it in action.
Yes, I'm going to concentrate fully on layups and
Layups, super
nice soft.
sexy.
I love nice soft layups and and gentle putbacks. They're much classier.
Have some
uh,
respect, guys.
I'm just trying to protect my heart, but I have to say DeAndre Ayton having 5 dunks last night was really spectacular.
He had a
Like
really, really great game. A
he's
dom, one might say a dominating game.
I think one could say that that was a dominating game. But I want to rewind it back to a couple games ago, the Houston game that you attended.
Yes.
And you got to bring your daughter to her first game. How did that go?
Oh my God, it was the best. So I'll say last year I had 100% planned to take her, but at the time her favorite player was Damian Lillard. And like we had like I knew that we were imminently shutting him down at some point last year. And I was like a little hesitant to buy, like it was hard for me to figure out when to buy tickets because I didn't want to buy tickets and then find out that he was done for the year. Um, and I, me being really not smart about it, I was like, he's gonna be here forever. I'll just take her next year. Well, that didn't
Mm.
work out, obviously. But she shows a new favorite player, scoots her new favorite player, and I thought oh, I thought that maybe he'd be back by this game.
You were so
I
close.
I was so close and I couldn't decide whether I wanted to like buy for Friday or for Saturday. Um, and the reason why I went with Friday instead of Saturday is because I knew that I would have like she was going to be up way later than her bedtime and I would have 2 days to get her back on schedule and it was already going to be kind of a mess because of daylight savings. Um, so I just opted for Friday instead of Saturday. And I'm so sad because one, we could have seen a win, and two, Scoot and Aiton both played. And like my family, who like I will say is they're much more casual basketball fans than I am. My daughter loves Scoot, and my husband loves like DeAndre Ayton, and we would have been able to see them both, and we would have been
Hmm.
able to see them both in a win.
Hmm.
But I also like I'll say I was scared that the mascots would scare my daughter too, because she didn't really love meeting Blaze when she first met
Yeah.
him for the first time.
Yeah. And mascot night is intense.
Yeah, and also did you watch any of the stuff that they did for mascot night? Like some of the mascots felt like they were off the beaten path.
Yeah. I kind of tune out when mascots start being shown. I'm not
I thought that
not
there would
really
be
that
the
into mascots.
aren't they normally like the duck and the beaver there?
I
There was
mean
no,
them and everybody else too.
but I didn't see the duck or the beaver. I saw like the Dallas horse, the Maverick.
Yeah. Were
I
they
saw
wonder what were the Ducks or Beavers playing last night?
maybe, but they have multiple masks. I mean,
What?
sorry, children, excuse me, but
What?
they've got multiple mascots.
No. Rose, you've crushed me.
Although I do think that I don't know if this is still true, but I do think that they observe like a they're never all out being seen by the world at the exact same time. So
Hmm.
like you can have like the duck say in California and then a duck here in Oregon, but even if the suits are like in separate places, like nobody's wearing them at the exact same time, so it's not making two appearances at the same time. They try to like create the illusion that there's one, even though they obviously can't travel that fast.
Mm. Hmm.
I don't know.
Well,
But like
you
so
crushed me.
The Seattle Seahawk was there.
Hmm.
Dylan, from the
The
Pickles.
pickle. Hmm.
Yes, and the I don't know what the hops guy is, but the hops guy was there.
Okay.
And but there was no duck and there was no beaver, and then there was only like two other NBA mascots. There was like the Maverick, and then I don't know what Utah Jazz's mascot is. It looks like a Wookiee. Um, but it's like a big brown guy, furry
Yeah.
guy thing. I don't know what he is, but he
Wait,
was
were you
there.
you were there on mascot night or you weren't there on?
No, I wasn't there at
Okay,
mascot
you
night.
saw that on
I was just
TV. Okay.
watching them on TV. But it was just weird because I was like, this feels like some off-brand mascots for us to
Yeah.
have here. Um,
Well, maybe because we weren't on national TV, we didn't get the top tier mascots.
Maybe that's right. So anyway, I was gonna say when I went to the game, we got there early because I wanted Audra to be able to walk around a little bit. I brought her. She wears like like sound dampening headphones sometimes when things are too loud, but she was totally not into them at all. She was like, "No, this is great," and she got really into like booing, which was awesome.
Oh,
And I think she was like trying to figure out like when people boo, like because she
yeah.
doesn't always understand all the rules or what's happening. Um, and so like one time she really thought it was time to boo, and she gets up and she yells boo, and nobody else yells boo, and she's like, oh, and she looks
Oops.
around like, never mind. And I was like, it's okay, you can boo if you want to. I was like, but it's just nice to boo when everybody else boos. And I told her that people like to boo the guy in the referee shirt more than anybody, not
Oh
even
no.
really other players. So she got really excited to boo him because we had two challenges that the Rockets won, and that was prime booing time for her.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Did I recall correctly that you sat across from the bench?
yes, we sat like these are the best seats I've ever bought in my entire life because I wanted to like make it special for her. But we were like, I don't know, halfway down through section 114, which was like pretty central, but it had a perfect view of the bench. And actually it was great because then I could also point out Scoot to Audra when he was on the
Hmm.
bench
Yeah.
because he wasn't in the game.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say everybody's fashion looked amazing.
This whole team has really stepped it up. I think they know about the award.
Yeah, I know.
I think
Shaden
they're
was wearing a very fashionable outfit. I loved his jacket and the pants that he had with it. Like Jeremy looked awesome as always.
Mhm.
Jabari looked great. Like I, I will say the one thing I wanted about the view of the bench is that I wanted to have a good view of bench celebrations, but like the biggest, best things that were bench celebration worthy were not by our team when I went
No.
to the game. They were mostly by the Rockets, which is also why I guess I'm off dunks because there was like two highlight worthy dunks by the Rockets by Jalen Green. And I saw that highlight like a zillion times and I'm like, done with
Yeah,
this.
and weren't you like, this is just not, this is not. We're out on this.
I was like, this is so gauche, guys.
Yeah, go totally. Yeah.
It's so gauche. Like, please
Yeah, have a little class and make a
have some
gentle layup.
decorum.
Gentle layups.
Yeah, for Ime Udoka's hometown.
Now, so it sounds like it was a successful first game. What are you going to tell her when you have to go sit up in the 200s or the 300s?
I don't think she'll care, honestly.
As long as there's booing around.
Yes, as long as there's booing, as long as there's like Dippin' Dots.
Uh,
She had Dippin' Dots for the first time, and she was like, "This is ice cream. It's tiny." And I'm like, "I know.
you know,
You
I've
can
never had dipping dots.
really?
Dippin' dots. Sorry. Yes.
What?
No, I've never had them.
Oh my gosh, you should try them at least once.
They were
They're
even
just
giving
kind of
out free ones at the Rip City United event, and I was so focused on getting to Jabari Walker that I just walked right past the Dippin' Dots and didn't get my free one.
oh my gosh, Tara, you should just try them for the novelty of it. It's
Yeah.
like I don't know. I don't know if it's like I don't know if it's good exactly, but they're interesting.
I took some friends to their first NBA game this year, and they were super excited about the Dippin' Dots. They were like, "This is like," they were saying that when they were growing up, they just thought that was just like the epitome of like the coolest experiences when you get to have Dippin' Dots. So I was like, well, "I'm glad you enjoyed them."
Well, so the other aspect of this game that I think was fun for me is that it was also my father-in-law's first Blazer game.
Oh, he came too.
Yeah,
Fun.
so it was like me and my daughter and my husband and my father-in-law. And my father-in-law has been he's like splits time between LA and Oregon, and he's seen like LA teams play, but he hasn't been here to see the Blazers play. And so this was his first Blazer game. And so that was really exciting because it was like, young and old,
Mm-hmm.
um, first game together.
Multi-generational. 3 generations there.
Yeah. And everyone had a good time. Everybody got to try treats that they don't normally eat. Everybody got to see like honestly, like we had great seats. We could see the whole game really well. The Blazers were competitive all the way to the end, even though they didn't win. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it was a really good time. And I'll say like we got there early and so we walked by the broadcast desk and Brooke came out and met my daughters because Brooke's the best.
Oh,
And
that's
so Audrey got to meet
awesome.
Brooke and she was so shy, right? I was like, "Oh, this is our friend Brooke." Like Brooke talks about the Blazers on TV and um she was really shy about it. But then like the next night when we were watching the game at home, she was like, "Oh, look, there's my friend Brooke. She's
Ah.
wearing my favorite color." Because she was wearing like green on Saturday night on TV. And it was just so funny because that's sort of the same experience she had when she met Blaze, super scared when she met Blaze, but now she sees Blaze on TV and she's like, "There's my friend Blaze."
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad. I wish that you guys had been able to get the win, but that was very smart of you to like think through. That's more than I would have thought through. I would have just like dragged him out and then thrown him out at school the next day, probably.
I'll say so much of the way that I think about my life and scheduling is around my child's sleep.
Hmm.
Like, how do I get my child to enough sleep to do what she needs to do each day and
Hmm.
not make it really, really hard? So, like, I overthink everything that affects sleep.
Well, and she'll probably grow up like with an appreciation of sleep, knowing the attention that has been focused on sleep. And that's like such an important thing. And that was not a thing that I grew up with, is valuing sleep or anything like that. And I am a terrible sleeper. I barely sleep, and it shows. So I think you're equipping her with good things. I'm just remembering that one of the very first people I ever had on the podcast was a sleep specialist who
Oh,
she consults, or she did this maybe like 5 years ago. I've been doing this how long, I don't know, but she consulted with NBA teams about their sleep schedules and about helping players, especially young ones who are just getting into the league, figure out their sleep schedules and how to establish consistency. And one thing that sticks with me that I learned from her was something about the nappuccino. Have you ever heard of the nappuccino?
Is this mean where you drink a cup of coffee and then take a nap and then
And then
wake up and
take a
feel really
nap.
good? Yeah.
Yes,
Co-
yes.
well, I've never called it a nappuccino, but I think about it as like, yeah, like coffee naps.
Yeah, I never had thought about that before. So I was just thinking about all the NBA players out there with their nappuccinos.
Wait, did she endorse that? Did she say it was a good
Yeah.
idea?
Yeah, well, she said a lot. She was saying that it was something that a lot of people do, and as far as I recall from our conversation, which was like 5 years ago, it was like we were talking about different techniques that people use to like, make sure that they get the sleep that they need, and and just different things that she teaches people about. And so maybe that was like one option is like if you like to take a nap, but you want to like you feel too groggy, maybe this is something to do.
That's cool. I do know that there's like the NBA guys, not all of them, but like there's quite a few of them that are like quite into coffee. Like coffee is like a
Shaden.
whole. Oh, is he?
Well, I feel like Shaden always, I don't know if I feel like it's coffee. I feel like I've seen him somewhere, but he's like got the cup, and I think Shaden is a coffee drinker. I can't remember where, but I remember noticing it like last year. And maybe it was like when they did the tour of the young guys' houses and were like, what's in your refrigerator? He had like coffee creamer. And he
Mm.
was like, that's like the most important thing. And I was like, yes. The
Who
coffee
was
part,
it?
but not
Was
the
it
creamer
Chris
part.
Chris Kaman that was the big coffee guy early, like maybe like 5 years ago? They remember they did like a whole story
Yeah.
about the Blazers like being really into coffee, and I know that like Steve Blake did it, and like they would like I don't know, like guys would drink like a cup of coffee like an hour before the game, or
Yeah. That just doesn't seem like Chris Kaman, but I could be completely wrong.
I don't remember who it was now. It was somebody who's
It
no
wasn't Nurk.
longer. No, it was pre-Nurk.
Hmm.
It was pre-Nurkic, and it was like God, I don't remember who it was centered on now, but they were talking about like Damian Lillard bringing like becoming a big coffee
Mhm.
drinker because of this person, and like now like the staff, like the training staff, traveled with like Water Avenue coffee beans or something.
Yeah. Now it's gonna bug me. I have to sleep. Okay. We have to talk about something so I can look it up.
Okay. Um. Anyway,
There's coffee. Okay, we'll start with that. Trailblazer coffee. Game day coffee routine. Oh, here we go. The game day caffeine routine that powers the NBA's most frequent flyers, Portland Trail Blazers.
because we always fly the most miles.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, now there's gonna be
I say as I sip my coffee.
yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, Kenyon. It was Chris Kaman. Good job, Rose.
Chris Kaman, see?
Yes,
I gotta
it was the
I
fall
gotta
of 2014, prior to the preseason tilt, and Forcier, is that the name of the trainer, and Kenyon were boiling water to make coffee, as they often did, and the temperature on the electric kettle rose to 220 degrees. The team's news center, Chris Kaman, erupted. No, 190. He was adamant the water's temperature needed to be precisely 190. Yep. Okay.
Yep. And it
That
was
was a
like
fun little
it was like
memory
they're
lane.
coffee snobs. It was like that was a story about us. That was like when they did the PB&J story about the Warriors.
Hmm.
That was our version, was the coffee
And
story.
it was Baxter Holmes. Yeah. The guy
Yeah.
who I think he wrote the same one. It was January 4th, 2019. What a
Yeah.
time.
So
What a time.
let me ask you, how do you take your coffee?
Black.
Black, same.
Yeah. How
Just
about you?
black.
Same. Yeah.
Black. Sometimes I use a little bit of oat milk when I'm feeling like I have reflux going on just to cut the
Hmm.
acidity, but usually black.
Yeah. I drink, and for years, I drank lots and lots and lots of coffee, but related to sleep, I've cut way back on coffee. And now I only have 2 cups in the morning, and then I stop, and then I go to herbal tea, which I used to not like at all, but now I actually like it. I like
Yeah.
mint tea is really tasty. So that's what I'm drinking right now.
He's great. I have to switch to tea. I can really only have like one cup of coffee. Every time I have a second cup of coffee, it's like 90% of the time it's a mistake. So I just try not to do it and I just switch to tea. Um, and you're right, it's good for sleep. I
Um,
can't be drinking coffee like 4 in the afternoon.
do we want to say anything else about the recent games? I mean, before we move on to our main topic for the
Can we just
day.
say really quickly that like Delano Banton has been a delight.
Yes, I
I'm
love
like
him.
so pleased. One, I know you were already on like high on him because he's a tall guard, and you were like, we love tall guards. But like he's playing really well here. And he was basically like free. Because he was a two-way guy for Boston, I think, when we got him. We basically got him for what is the NBA equivalent of free. Um, and he's been playing really great minutes, and he looks really good and comfortable. And I don't know, like when I was watching him on Friday, I was he has like these beautiful long strides. He's big and long and has like exactly the kind of body that everybody in the NBA wants like a bunch of players to have. And like I was like, I feel like he's here next year. I feel like he makes his team.
My fingers are crossed. I love the way he streaks. I feel like that's the perfect description of the way he moves. He just
Yes.
streaks because he just goes shoom, across, and you're like, where did he come? But the thing about him streaking is it means guys are moving off the ball.
Yeah.
Like, you know how many years we've sat there and watched guys just park on the 3-point line while Damian Lillard did stuff and maybe somebody would remember to go. Like, I feel like
Yes.
there's more movement, and Delano is like, like typifies that, and he just goes zoom right across the court. And it's like, where did he come from? This is so exciting. And I feel like I've reached a point where I'm starting to get mature enough to understand that playing really good right now in this situation on a team that is not great, like we have to like temper our expectations. Like, he's not Kevin Durant,
Right.
but he's what we need right now. He's what we need, somebody who will move, who's tall and gives the offense a different look when you have somebody who can actually see over people
Hmm.
handling the ball. And he opens up things. So I would love to have him on the team next year, but I'm like not getting attached. I'm trying not, I get attached to every single one of them, but I'm trying to logically think through that he might not be here next year, especially when they have draft guys that they drafted, that they're
Yeah.
committed to. I just, not to be a downer. I love him, and I'm super excited for him, but it's also kind of helping me think about like Jabari. Like, I feel like Jabari has played himself into a place where he's now going to be, I think, a player that other teams might be interested in. Like,
Yeah.
before, he was our Jabari and we loved him because he was our Jabari. And we, of course, pumped him up way, because compared to everything else that was going on, like, we had to have something to hang on to and to love. Um, so I don't think that he's probably as important as we think that he is, but I do think that he's played himself into a place where other teams might be like, I could really use a guy like that who can come in and do that. And maybe Delano, will be the same way, because you can't not notice him when he's on the
Right.
floor.
Right. And like, so one of the things I keep thinking about is the Blazers are still figuring out who their starting five are going to be, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
we don't know who's going to start, let alone what the bench lineups are going to look like. But like a guy like Delano Banton fits on a lot of bench units because he can play like multiple ways. He can play on ball, he can play off ball. He's like fast and physical and moves a lot. Like there's a lot of ways to use a guy like that. Some guys like I don't always see their like versatility in that way, or they're like, oh, they work for certain types of lineups, but not necessarily others. That's a guy that fits on a lot of different kinds of like lineups, I think. Um, and Jabari, like I'll say that Jabari, I will be so sad if he's not a Blazer because he's our Jabari. But also, I think of him a little bit like Nas, like he's a valuable guy that helps get a trade done.
mhm.
And I don't want I don't know. I hate saying that about like players, because I'm like, that's our Jabari Walker. We watched him grow up. Look at his fashion now. Oh, but like in the reality is when it comes time to putting together like the last few pieces to make all of your like your lineups and your vision for your team work, a guy like Jabari, if he doesn't fit your vision, can help you get make the trade that will get the guy that fits your vision. Um
Mhm.
and like I don't know, that feels bad, but you know what I mean? Like when you have
Mhm.
a bunch of young guys, they can't all just be 20 forever. You can't have a team that's all 20-year-old guys.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally see that. And one of the things that I'm a little bit worried about looking at next year is, how everybody's talking about, and we've talked about this before, this year's like a down draft, but next year has another superstar. And I'm worried we're going to have to watch another year of this kind of basketball. And I really don't want to. I really want them to be a solid middle of the road team next year, leading up to, and I don't want them to be middle of the road team like they're done and that's as good as they're going to get. I want them to be middle of the road team because the the players who really didn't know what they were doing now know what they were doing, and they're still growing. I just want to be clear about that. I don't want to
Yeah.
settle for mediocre, but if they're mediocre next year on the way to something else, I'm fine with that. I don't want to watch them capture the flag, I think is what people are saying.
You don't want, like, so the pendulum has swung all the way in one direction. You need to see it start swinging back the other way. Even if it's to the same, like around the same area, it has to be swinging towards something good now.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
I think I'm totally with you there.
it's tough because like I can see the team like having to make that decision. Like as fans, we can have opinions about the decision that they're going to make, but they have to make that decision. Like, do we want to do this for one more year
Mm,
to see if we have it? And I don't know what goes into making that decision. I don't know what the formula is. I don't know what, the team has to consider to decide which direction that they're going to go. I'm just being selfish and thinking I don't want to watch another year where we know what's going on. I want to watch like this year is fine because there's just been so much mix up in the lineup due to injuries that kind of makes it easier. Like it's disappointing that we don't know what Scoot and Jaden can do, but
yeah.
for the most part, it's been interesting to watch.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if I could stomach another year of it's interesting to watch, but we really don't care about wins. Like I
Yeah.
I just don't know if I'm ready for that. I know I said I was built for tanking, but I'm like, I can only look at it one year at a time.
Yeah. And I mean, tanking assumes that you're still like trying to lose or you're on your way down. Like we need to be starting rebuilding at some point.
Mhm.
Like I know that the rebuild has already sort of started to happen, but like we need to start seeing like the foundation of that rebuild instead of just trying to collect the all the different pieces that we need. Because like
And
I'll say that I hate starting the year and ending the year with completely different lineups. This is not the G League. Like that's
mhm,
not what we should be like watching as fans. It's hard to even like track the like progress we can see in our team when the lineups are changing so dramatically.
mhm. I guess I want to know more about this Cooper Flag guy and like why everybody thinks that he's so worth going for. Because like when you look back on it retrospectively, like you can see why you would have wanted LeBron James, you
Right.
know, but I don't, or even Victor Wembanyama. I'd say that with a look on my face because San Antonio got him, not because I don't think he's like a generational talent. But like, is this Cooper Flag a generational talent? I don't know. But like, what if he is and we're that close? I don't know. I don't know.
I always try to remind myself when I think about the draft that when people talk about it being like an up or a down year, they're really talking about the like lottery.
Yeah.
And we know tons of amazing talent is not found in the lottery.
Hmm.
Some of like the most interesting players in the NBA that end up being impactful stars were not drafted in the lottery. And there's always, later they have people always relitigate like, like the draft like 10 years later. They're like, look
Hmm.
at what the draft looked like 10
Redraft.
years
Yeah.
ago. And you're like, obviously this is silly because like we have so much more information and it's very easy to look back and be like, oh, what dummies these guys were. No, they weren't. They were working on like a limited amount of information about a kid who, it was like 19 at the time. Of course, these guys change a lot. Anyway, I just always try to like like hold that close to my chest a little bit and remind myself like a lot of really great talented guys went later than the lottery picks. And a
Hmm.
lot of really like amazing like championship winning players in a lot of cases didn't even come in the first round. Like people talk about Draymond Green, like Draymond Green was really important to the Warriors when they were on their way up. Like and dude went in the second round. Like you can come from anywhere and be an impactful player. And so like up and down years on the lottery is based on a limited amount of information. And it doesn't necessarily tell us how great the players in that draft are going to turn out to be in the NBA.
I think it'll just be a matter of muting all the people who are complaining about it next year if they wish that we were going for that. It really comes down to that, I think. It's like, do I want to listen to people complain about it? Like, there's always going to be noise, and that's a me problem for not tuning them out, I guess.
I I'll say everybody's down on this draft and everybody's acting like, oh, nobody wants draft picks. I'll tell you what, it's when it's a week before the draft, guys
Mhm.
there's going to be teams that are trying to acquire draft picks to get guys that they've decided that they want for their team, even in a down year. Like that always happens. There's always teams that are like, oh, there's actually a guy that I really want here.
Mhm.
So like, I don't know. It's down until it's like right in your face.
Until
And
it's
then,
right in front of you. Yeah. And
yeah. And
then
then
you
all
have
of a
to
sudden
do
some teams are like,
something.
oh yeah, there's a guy I have my heart set on and I'm going to get that draft pick.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Tara, it's finally here. Today we're going to talk about Duop Reath.
So excited. I've been looking forward to this so much.
So a lot of people, I'll say a lot of people have preempted this podcast. There's been a lot of information about Duop Reath because he just got his NBA contract, um,
And it's an
which I was so
awesome
excited about.
story. Yeah.
Matisse did that awesome feature on him. People wrote stories about him, like like he represents a lot of firsts, I think, or a lot of, and he's like it has a really unique story, and so folks have been writing about him a lot. But it's our time because we like to cover everybody who's put on a Blazer jersey, and I couldn't be more excited to talk about Duop Reath because he's I don't know. When you're rooting for a team that you know is not going to win a championship, that's not going to contend for a championship, that's not their plan, you get to root for the development of the guys on that team to be good and get better. And I feel like Reath has really done that for me this year. He's been somebody that I could watch and I was like, how old is he as a rookie? Like that kind of attitude. But it's been really magical to watch him like grow, play well with the remix, earn the contract that he got. And I don't know, like really impress fans that didn't know what to expect with him as a 27-year-old rookie. Um, so anyway, I I will start us off because I've spent a lot of time reading about him in the last few weeks. So his name, Duop Thomas Reath was born on June 26th, 1996. So he's 27 years old, which I don't know if that makes it. He's not the oldest rookie. I don't even think he's because technically wasn't Arvydas Sabonis older than that when he came here. So he's not
He
even
was
the oldest
31.
Portland rookie. Um, but he was born so in 1996 it was Wat Sudan, which is no longer in Sudan. It is now in the Jonglei state of South Sudan. Or I guess technically it's called the Republic of South Sudan as of 2005, I think is when they started operating as an independent region. And then like 2011 is when they voted by referendum for independence. So I think this is the youngest country in the world.
Yeah. I've
Um,
read that.
yes. So he was born in Sudan, but grew up primarily in a refugee camp in Kenya. Um, I think that Matisse's video covered a lot of that part of his life, which I think is like really interesting to hear him reflect about what it's like to grow up in a refugee camp. Because I think in like Western cultures, like we don't have refugee camps near where we live, and so we don't know what they look like. And I really appreciated in that video that Matisse shared was that he talked about it like, yes, there was lots of things that happened, but I felt like, but it was still a really joyful time because I was around people that loved me. And when if you have like, you know, food to put in your stomach and people who love you and you can have a good time with them, you don't feel like you're missing out on
Mhm.
things.
It's my understanding that he was in Watt until he was 9, and then they went to the refugee camp, and that they were there for about a year.
Before they went to Australia. Well, I think he went to Australia at 9.
Okay.
So he
But
emigrated
it's
to
my
Australia.
understanding they actually, because like that refugee camp is one of the largest ones in the world, and most
Hmm.
people stay there for many years, if not decades, and that their family was there for a comparatively short amount of time, which was about a year.
Uh, I'll believe you. I'll believe you on that. I just know that he emigrated. He emigrated at 9. So
Yes.
I think he
Okay.
was
Yeah.
there maybe younger than 9. I would be surprised
Yeah.
if he was there like that short of a time because of how much he's talked about it. But he emigrated partially because I think he had a relative that emigrated to Australia that was able to sponsor his family to come to
Hmm.
Perth. Um, and he has 9, no, sorry, 6 brothers and sisters, 6 siblings, and he and his siblings and his parents were able to emigrate to Brisbane, not Perth. I think later he moved to Perth when he went to because he went to high school in Perth. Um, but it's really interesting because he didn't even know what like when he came to Australia, he didn't know basketball. Like he grew up playing soccer. He was interested in soccer. Soccer was something that like, he did with his friends his whole young life. And then basketball was not something that he was really like exposed to until he was much older. Like in, I think like middle school is when he first saw the flyer for a basketball team, right? Was it middle school? I don't know. The way they talk about schools in us, I don't know the school system Australia. Talk about like primary school maybe, or I don't know exactly
Yeah,
the
they
language
just
they
like they
use.
call out numbers. They're like, when I was in about 6, and I was like, what's 6?
What's that mean? So there's like my naivety about like the way they like talk about school in Australia when he talks about like when certain things happen in his life. I'm like, I don't know when that is, but I know about what age you were. Um, but I just thought it was really interesting that like a lot of the guys that we talk about on this podcast, Tara, are guys who are identified young as basketball talents. Like by the time he was learning about basketball, sometimes like sometimes guys in the US are already on like the radar of scouts. And he was
Mhm.
just learning about what basketball was at that age. And it's like, we were talking about how DeAndre Ayton was identified from a very young age as somebody who was they were going to cultivate into a basketball star. Like compare that to Duop Reath. Like he just was learning what basketball was and if he was even interested in playing or doing this thing. Like, and he had to go out of his way to find a team that would be willing to take him. And I know that we both read that story about his first coach, who was a woman, who would like go and pick him up 30 minutes away from where the team played and drive him to uh to the gymnasium where they would practice. And like, I don't know, it just all sounds so casual compared to a lot of the guys we talk about on this podcast.
Yeah, and like so many players that we have read about, especially ones who come from different countries, like he grew up playing soccer. Like, and that was one of the things that he was talking about in the thing with Matisse about in the refugee camp, was that was something that all the kids did is, playing soccer. So, he wanted to be a soccer player, and you're like, and it wasn't until later that he found, but I always think it's good to like have multiple sports in your background, and you don't get like, hyper focused on just one and only doing it that way. That's usually like a benefit, I think.
Yeah, and also multiple team sports. One of the things that I sort of like about the idea of like having soccer in your background is like, so soccer, the like the number of players that you're playing with at any given time is much greater. And so the teamwork that's required um is like that like that's what makes like good players great, like that they play well as a team because like when you're one of 11, you don't have as much impact on the game as say in basketball where you can just like you're 20% of your team at any given time on the floor. And I just think that there's some like kind of nice groundwork that gets laid for like how important teamwork is for elevating your chance of winning. um I don't know, I think about that a lot because in basketball like it's a team sport, but like there are teams that run schemes as such as like there is one person who we play for, who we play through, I should say. And in soccer, it just can't quite happen in that way. And I wonder if that like leads to like a really good like mentality for players who move from say soccer to basketball.
I can't remember who said it, but I was talking to somebody at one point who was a coach, who was a basketball coach, and he said that what he did is when he was putting his teams together, he'd ask who played soccer, and then he'd ask who played center mid, and then he would make them the point guard. And just be like,
Oh,
and
you're
they'd
the
be like,
point
okay,
guard.
great, now you're a point guard.
That's funny. Um, that's very funny. Yeah, I guess that is sort of your role because you do well. I don't know. It kind of depends. Well, I won't get into the weeds about soccer, but it depends. Um, but I appreciate that he grew up playing basketball on his own terms. Like we also talk about how a lot of the guys that we have talked about on this podcast, whether basketball found them or they found basketball, and a lot of the times, you know, basketball comes to you when you're, especially when you're like the size that these guys are, when you're like a center size, like basketball will find you and look to like turn you into a basketball player because you're huge. Like the story about Nurk being like the way Nurk was discovered, whether that's folklore, whether it's reality, I don't really know. But like W.H.A.T was definitely found and they're like, now you're going to be a basketball star. And
Mm-hmm.
Reath, I feel like, found basketball.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I noticed about his early playing years, is that he ended up, I think at a probably early high school age, I think around like 15, 16, he started playing with a team of South Sudanese players. That Australia has a pretty large population of South Sudanese immigrants, and enough so that they actually had an annual tournament of teams who
Yeah.
played with this folks.
It's the Savannah Pride
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
name of the team.
And the guy, who's the guy who was the guy who's in charge of like this league and this South Sudanese tournament, his name is Mayor Chagai. He was also a refugee.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to think that that was also in addition to like he enjoyed playing basketball. It was like a connection like back to his community, because he talks a lot about being connected to others who were South Sudanese, and
Mm-hmm.
also about like wanting to go back, hoping to go back there someday and give back there someday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting because so I say I have like this sort of a particular interest on how like different cultures move to different areas around the world. Like if I don't know if you've like been to like so like here we have a lot of folks from like Vietnam in this area, and there's a couple other like ethnic groups. I'm like, how do like cities that are not in those countries become hubs for those communities? And a lot of the times it's through like refugee programs, like which where people are typically settled through a refugee program. And then eventually it just becomes like, well, people go there because there's already a bunch of people already there
Mm-hmm.
where they can find community. And so I was like, he got there to Australia through a relative, through being sponsored, I think through a relative. And, you know, he already had community, like South Sudanese community where he was, because, it was just like this way that people were able to settle in this particular area of the world. And like I started to think about this when I realized like how large the Somali community is in Minneapolis and like Minnesota area, and I was like, why Minnesota? Why would they all be here? But like every cab driver I ever rode in a cab with, and when I was in Twin Cities, was from Somalia specifically, and I was like, okay, well this is random, but it's because they had a refugee program where a lot of people initially settled there, and then eventually you become the place where even if the refugee program ceases to exist, people continue to come because they already have community there and they know that they will be able to find people who can help them succeed in a new area. Anyway, I just like that he like so like you're going to a foreign country, but you already have some built-in community with connections and people who can help you connect to your interests and thrive and do well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this gentleman recognized that there were a lot of South Sudanese men mostly, but I think they also have women's teams who were playing basketball, and so they had this big annual tournament. Um, it was at this big annual tournament where he was first seen by a guy named Marcus King,
Hmm.
who was the assistant coach at Lee College in Texas.
Yeah, which is a like a junior college.
Mhm.
And he was the one who initially offered him a scholarship to come to play there. And it was one of the things I thought was really sweet is that Duop Reath was like excited to go and play college basketball to get a free education, but also that he didn't really like think about the difference between a junior college or know the difference between a junior college and like a 4-year university. Because he talked about going and realizing that he can only be there for like 2 years really. Which is how he like moved from Lee to LSU eventually.
Mhm. You mentioned DeAndre Ayton and how basketball found him, and he was, when we talked about him before, he was 14 I think, when, or maybe he was younger than that, when he was taken where not taken from his family, that sounds dramatic, when he moved away from his family to the US to start his career and trajectory. So he was pretty young when he did that, because the whole time I was reading about Reath, I could not help but compare to DeAndre Ayton's journey. And, from hearing from Reath, like the decision to go to college was, like so he could get an education. It wasn't to go there to become an NBA basketball star. It was to go and get an education. And it felt like the people around him were looking for what would be best for him. And so Marcus King had some other South Sudanese players. So, he knew a little bit about the culture, and maybe that could maybe ease the path for him a little bit. But I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's so interesting because one of the things that I thought when I was reading about Reed's journey is like there's so many more years we have to read about for him because his path to the NBA was a lot longer than most guys. And we talk about how we have right now, like our team is filled with guys who never really played pro basketball, or even college basketball before they got here. Like he did all of college. He went like to lots of different countries to play pro basketball there. Like his path is long to get to the NBA. And then you look at guys like, like Ant, who basically played high school and then went pro,
Hmm.
and Shaden, who like technically went to a college but didn't play in college. And Scoot, who went to the Ignite for 1 year. Like these are all guys whose like their paths to the NBA were like short.
Hmm.
And Reed's like he took a long winding path to whatever seemed like, was the next step for him to do. He didn't seem like to have like a long thought out plan about his like journey to the NBA. He's like, well, I guess I'll go to China. I guess the next stop will be Lebanon. Like he just kind of did whatever seemed like the next best thing. And it feels a little bit refreshing in that like it feels like it was also more in his hands because of that. Like he wasn't treading down the same path that every other pro had done ahead of him.
Hmm. So after Lee College in Texas, which was the junior college, when he realized that he had 2 more years of
Mm,
college, that's when he transferred to LSU. And
hmm.
he actually transferred there with another player on the Lee
Oh,
College
right,
team.
right.
His He moved to Baton Rouge with Brandon Jenkins was his roommate. And that's kind of nice that he had somebody to like go with him.
Yeah, to be his buddy.
Hmm. To the bright lights of, I mean, LSU at the time was not a great program. I mean, I don't think at that time they were a great program. Um, but they were, a Division 1 big, they were still a big deal. And, have
Also,
somebody familiar with you.
we weirdly have a lot of like former LSU Tigers that have come through Portland.
Yeah. Well, he played for 2 years with Skylar Mays.
Yeah, yeah. Like so we had like Skylar Mays and Trendon Watford
Hmm.
and Tim
Hmm.
Quarterman went to LSU before Quarterman, was a Blazer for
Yeah.
briefly. Like we just I don't know, it just feels like for a school that's not known for like being like a really exceptional basketball program, we've had quite a few LSU Tigers come through here.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So he ended up going to college for 4 full years. I don't remember if he finished his degree yet. Um, he had one of kind of a general studies degree.
Hmm.
But one thing that when I was reading up about him, that I thought was interesting when he was younger, uh, he said when he was growing up, he wanted to be like a mechanic because he
Oh,
liked to fix things. Like people
yeah.
would bring him things that were broken and he would like fix bikes and stuff. And so he kind of wanted to be a mechanic. And then later on, when he was in college, he was interested in more like the healthcare field because he
Mm,
liked helping people, So he's kind of maybe it's because he was the oldest or whatever, but he's always
yeah.
been sort of like it sounds like he's always been sort of like a problem solver, a tinkerer, somebody who liked to think through solutions, whether or not it was like mechanical or for people.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
That is some like kind of oldest sibling energy, right? I was like, my mom is the oldest of four, and she has some very like also some very like helping qualities about her personality. She
Mhm.
was a teacher. But yeah, I think that is very interesting that he I don't know, as like that it makes him a good fit for team sports, I will say.
Yeah.
Because team
Well,
sports is all about helping people around you.
yeah. Well, the other thing that I thought was remarkable was that, he was the youngest of seven siblings, I believe. And like in their culture, the
Wasn't he the
oldest,
old? He was the oldest.
yeah, did I
Yeah,
say
yeah.
youngest? I meant to
You
say
said youngest.
I meant to say the oldest. I'm the
Yeah.
youngest. So I was thinking about me. It's all about me. No, he was the oldest of all these siblings. And so in his culture, like it's on him to take care of all of the younger siblings. And for him to leave was like a big decision. And he talked about it, to decide to leave and like give up that responsibility that he'd been raised to, understand that was his part of it. So, maybe he's thinking that being able to go and get an education would give him opportunities so that you could have that role. But that's a significant decision.
I mean, I did hear him say that like that was part of his decision to leave, though, that like, you can go get your education for free. Like this might transform my family's life
Hmm.
for me to go and get a college degree. Like,
Hmm.
so like even though he was leaving and like leaving that like being close to his family to assume that role, it was still like with the idea that he could help provide for his family in the future. Like, so it was still like part of like it wasn't like he was just abandoning that role. He was just
Yeah.
seeing it in a new way. Um, and I sort of love that because I think that a lot of the times we see pro basketball players that see college as a means to getting to the pros, and he saw college as a means to like getting the education, which I don't think is something that I don't know we hear about as often. That like basketball was his way to get a free education, not like going to college was a way for him to become a pro basketball player, which is
Hmm.
how that like is sort of treated now.
Hmm.
Um, and it was just, and it kind of speaks to that thing we were talking about before. Like, this was just the next thing, the next best thing, the next best thing. It wasn't like all on this grand, like, plan to be a pro basketball player. It's like the next best thing for me is for me to be able to go to college for free and get an education so I can care for my family and transform their lives. Like, I don't know. I,
I
I
felt
find that really nice.
Yeah, I felt like that his life was, instead of like having one goal, which is to become the number one NBA draft pick, which
Yeah.
is what DeAndre Ayton was like, that's what he was going for, like become the number
Mhm.
one pick, and everybody was working on that. Reath, it was like a series of decisions, like or a series of steps, like first, I'm going to go to junior college. Like, oh, this worked. I'm going to go to, a 4-year college. Oh, this worked. Now I'm going to go enter the pros. Wasn't able to get drafted, but was able to get a job in Serbia. And it just felt like a series of steps. And like as he achieved each goal, he found satisfaction in doing that thing. And so he kept doing it and then looked for the next goal, rather than it just being like singular focus. It was like, oh, I met this goal and I still like doing this. There's one interview where we talked about how he loved the process. He was like, I had achieved this thing, I had made it to the pros, but it turned out I
Mhm.
really liked the process of getting there and I wanted to keep doing it. So I just kept going.
Yeah. And he played like pro like all over the world before he came to the NBA. He won didn't he win a championship in Lebanon? I think he won a
In Lebanon,
championship in
yeah.
Lebanon. He won a championship. Like, and I remember I read in an article that when he plays for I think he's an Australian citizen. He plays for the national team, the Australian men's national team. And I read that like when they played South Sudan in a friendly, like he participated in both anthems. And people like were really struck by that. And so I I think it's I can't imagine what it's like to have to like not well, I sort of can in a weird way, but like to like you're not in the country, your home country, and you have to find ways to bring your like family and culture along with you and then all the things that you do. And he's traveling all around the world, but he's always South Sudanese. And um I was just thinking about how like right now there's like a movement in amongst South Sudanese folks that are around the world to bring basketball more into the forefront of like their visibility to the world. So you talked about the Savannah Pride in Australia, and we know Lil Dang has been really instrumental in creating their national team and getting them recognition. And I was just thinking about how so Reath plays with the Australian national team, but like I always kind of wondered if maybe he would end up playing for the South Sudanese national team now that they have one. Um, and this is a question that well, I mean, they'll both be at the Olympics in Paris this year. But something I'll say I'll keep my eye on because I'm just very interested in how people carry that with them. Because I'll say, look, I'll say I'm Korean, like, and I was born in Korea, but I don't live in Korea, and I've only been back to visit a few times, and I have family there. But it how you carry your culture with you around the world into other places is not necessarily an easy thing. And I think that he has done it very well by staying connected to his community wherever he is around the world and telling his story like he did to Matisse. Um, and I feel very close to him in that way because it's not necessarily an easy task to do. And I'm probably even more challenging because like Sudan and South Sudan are still like experiencing a ton of strife despite the fact that there's still South Sudanese independence. Like been in there's been a lot of ethnic violence and civil war there for years and years and years. Um, and I just really appreciate that basketball has given the country's South Sudan a platform for visibility in the world. And like, I'll say like this is I'm kind of jumping forward in time, but like I'm really excited to see their national team play. I know that he is probably going to play for Australia again, like he did in the Tokyo Olympics, but um, this will be the first time that we see any South Sudanese players um, represent
Representing the
uh,
country.
represent the country because
Yeah.
previously in previous Olympics, any South Sudanese athletes competed under the Olympic flag as refugees, not as representatives of their country.
Mhm. I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole of other NBA players from South Sudan. And, you mentioned Luol Deng. Thon Maker's actually also from there. Wenyan Gabriel
Rania
is from
Gabriel.
there. But probably the most famous is Manute Bol.
Hmm.
And, that was a while ago. And wow, his life is reading about him. That's a wild ride. He had a big, big life. But so much of almost everything that he earned his entire career, Manute Bol gave back to South Sudan and went back to South Sudan. So yeah, I was really interested in just like learning about South Sudan because if
Hmm.
I didn't really know much about it. And that's one of the things, like when you're talking about like carrying your culture with you, also like carrying your culture to like people like me who don't, have lived in like one little tiny place my entire life and like, hasn't experienced all of the world. Seeing people come in, you know, I learn more about places that I may not have learned more about because of my interest in them and what their story is. So I went down kind of like a South Sudan journey reading up about it, and it is so complicated that I wouldn't even try to
Yeah.
summarize it here
Nor I.
because yeah, it's just it's nuts. But like I didn't even like know where South Sudan was, and it's so I looked it up, and it's on, in Africa, when you look at like the widest part of Africa,
Hmm.
it's like, it's along that, what is it, longitude. It's a little bit above the equator. Sudan is directly below Egypt, and then South Sudan is directly below Sudan. It's on the eastern part of Africa, right next to Ethiopia. It's all landlocked. It's not on the coast. And the
Yeah,
part
it's like East Central
Yeah.
Africa.
Yeah, and the part that he was from seemed like it was really, really rural, um, before they moved on. But yeah, it was just, again, just I always learn new things about the world
Hmm.
by learning about these players.
Well, and it just feels very accidental that Duop Reath ended up a basketball player, and like that right now is one of the ways in which people are seeing his country. We're gonna like,
Mhm.
because of this program that has elevated basketball as to like a way for them to be competing in the Olympics, let's say, like I don't know, like I just really appreciate that he just accidentally happened into this thing that has become one of the ways in which people around the world are seeing his country and seeing who the people of this country are and where they are around the world and why. Like like Wendy and Gabriel was on that team that like won the berth to the Olympics. But like people barely know about Wendy and Gabriel in the
Mhm.
NBA, but we're gonna see him like start for an Olympic team.
And that is, I mean, that is, I feel like, okay, we're getting off a little bit off topic, but it's the South Sudanese team making the Olympics is such a big deal. They've only been a
Yes.
country for like 14 years,
Yeah,
13, 14.
2011 is
Yeah.
when
So
they passed a referendum.
So like they're a brand new country, and for them to have represented and played and won to get into, won the opportunity to play is just super exciting. So maybe they'll play against each other. Maybe Australia will play against them. Maybe they'll have a round where they get to play against each other.
Yeah. I get really excited at the Olympics, especially for countries that like I was like, rooting for the United States sometimes is boring, right? Because it's like this expectation you're gonna win, and if you don't win, it's a disappointment. Like, and that's kind of boring to root for. I love to root for like teams where they're like, we have one athlete in the Olympics this year, we have
Mhm.
three athletes in the Olympics this year, this is our first time at the Olympics this year.
Mhm.
And this is the first time that anyone will ever get to enter an Olympic stadium carrying the South Sudanese flag, because prior to that, they were only able to compete as refugees under the Olympic flag. Like, what
Mhm.
an amazing feat for for the basketball community and from I don't want to say in Sudan, because like I think when they qualified for the Olympics, they didn't even have a basketball arena in their
Mhm.
country. But Lil Dang, he collected every person that he knew around the world to help him find the best basketball players to seed this team. And now they like forever have this like organization that will help bring those players together to play for their country, even though most of them don't get to live in that country right now.
Mhm.
Anyway, it just feels really magical, and I'm really excited to see them all compete for South Sudan, and I will be rooting for them in every way possible, because like think about like they've already exceeded the expectation by even being there. Everything else is just like, I don't know.
Mhm.
It's just magic from there on out.
Yeah, we're gonna have multiple Blazers to watch, Blazers and former Blazers to watch this summer in the Olympics.
Matisse Thybulle and Reath are teammates on the Australian national team. So we'll get with I I makes sense that he made that video for them, but like I didn't really think about the fact that they've actually been friends maybe for
Yeah, they've known
years.
each other. Yeah, should we? I think we should do a kind of a rapid fire of
Yes.
like, because it may have felt rapid fire to him. It may have felt like it took forever, but like from graduating or leaving LSU to
Yes.
today. So in 2018 is when he left LSU. And at that point, his folks or people looked around to figure out where he should play, because he did not get any interest. He wasn't invited to the combine.
Hmm.
He was invited to, but so he went to Serbia, and he stayed in Serbia for 3 years. So
Right.
2 years with one team and then 1 year with another team. And I don't know if they were related and were like in different leagues. I don't know enough about Serbian basketball.
Yeah.
So he may have like played at one level and then moved up to the next level. I'm not 100% sure.
And
Um,
during his time in Serbia, he also did a couple of summer leagues.
Yes, yeah, he did a total of 4. Portland was his 4th summer league, I think. And it was while he was playing in Serbia, I think, that he found out he made the national team, the Australian national team.
Yeah, so he played in the Dallas Summer League first in I think 2018, and then he did Summer League for the Nets the following year. Well, this is all while he was in Serbia.
Okay. Uh so after Serbia, he went back home to play in Australia
Hmm.
for the NBL, which we've talked a little bit about them before, that the National Basketball League in
Hmm.
Australia. And then
Because that's where Ryan Rupert came from, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he went to, after Australia, he went to China. And after China, he went to Beirut. So this is where like the timeline, I just wrote it all down because I was like, wow, that's a lot. So in April of 2023, he went to Beirut and he played with the team there, and they won the championship.
Right.
And then in June, he was or sorry, in July, he played in Summer League.
Yes.
August, he played in the World Cup with the Australian national team. October, he comes back to Portland, and October
Mhm.
2nd, he signs a 1-year deal with the Blazers. On October 21st,
A two-way, right?
no, he
Oh,
first
the
got a
first
1-year
one.
deal to
Yeah,
be,
yeah,
it
that's
was
right.
like a training camp deal, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, 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 yeah.
but it was a 1-year training camp deal. So that was on the 2nd. On the 21st, he's cut. On the 24th is when he signs the 2-way.
Right.
On November 10th, he debuts with the Remix when he scores 37 points and 10 rebounds.
And that was when he really announced himself to the fan base, I will say.
Yes, and that was against the South Bay Lakers. 2 days later, November 12th, he makes his NBA debut against the Los Angeles Lakers. So he
Right.
played one game,
Yes.
and 2 days later, he was on the Blazers, and he never looked back.
Yeah, and also like I'll say like what a Blazer to like make your debuts against the Lakers, and
Mhm.
I don't know, like that's a way to like, make us see you, I'll say.
Yes. To have anybody who comes up big against the Lakers, yeah, we're going to take notice. And then on February 16th is when he signed his full NBA contract, because you believed in him and you had the champagne on ice. And I was over here worrying, but you were confident and you
You
were
were
right.
like,
And I'm
math is
so
not
glad.
good.
I
Math is
know.
not good, Rose. If we're doing math, it's not gonna happen.
I'm standing behind my worry, but I'm glad I was wrong.
We should also mention that he has an Olympic medal for Australia. He was on the Tokyo Australian men's national team when they won the bronze medal.
Mhm.
And I don't think he played at all. I went back and I looked, and he at least didn't play in the championship. I don't know if he actually got any playing time at all, but it's the team that's captained by Patty Mills. Matisse Thybulle's on that team. Joe Ingles is on that team. Um, Jock Landale from the Houston Rockets is on that team. There's a lot of NBA players that play on that team, but Patty has been like a long time player, and um, I just think it's really great because like that's a country that like has a good basketball scene, but like doesn't always win medals or whatever. So it's probably really special to win a medal together.
Mhm.
And it also makes it really great that he gets to reunite with Matisse on our team.
I loved it in the video where he was talking about being on the national team, and like in a really like, stone faced, or he like without breaking his, emotionalist, he was like, yeah, and I got to play with great players like Matisse Thybulle. And
Yeah,
you could just feel Matisse like blush.
yeah. Yeah, it's really funny because Matisse does you can tell he made that video like to not like to be
To
distant
not
from.
about him, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and somehow it ends up being about him a little bit.
Yeah, a little tiny bit.
Um
um Odds and ends.
Gosh, I don't know. Like, I'll just say, like, I was really thrilled that they gave him a 3-year deal. Um, like, it speaks to me that like maybe they think he's going to be good. And I had read somewhere that there there was concern that like they wouldn't want him to get to free agency like in the summer, that like maybe there would be interest and it would be hard to sign him. And it's nice to see that like our front office really valued him. Because I'll say as a fan, I really valued seeing him do well here. And again be this like atypical rookie that found his way here through a completely different path than we usually see guys show up in the NBA. And um I was thinking about how we also have like Ibu Baji on this team who also came through the NBA through some kind of non-traditional means, and I'm just really happy to see that these like other paths to the NBA are possible and opening themselves up to like I don't know, be ways that we are exposed to new talent that isn't just the high school to college for 1 year to
Mhm.
pros pipeline.
I'd
And
love to know who on the Blazers first started watching W.A.T. Reath. And I'm wondering if it's, a direct, testament to the fact that the Blazers have pretty significantly expanded their coaching, especially their international coaching. Um,
yeah, and they're scouting.
yeah, yeah, or that's what I meant. Sorry, scouting. So yeah, I really would love to just talk to the person who first had him on the Blazers radar and was like, "Hey, let's take a look at having this guy come in and see what he could do for us."
Yeah, in the same vein, I feel like, and I know maybe this is not just a Blazer thing, it's a whole NBA thing. There's been like a really, I feel like there's been far more scouting of G League teams just around. Like the fact that like a lot of the guys changing teams right now are like G League level players or like two-way guys
Mm-hmm.
is very interesting to me. Like at the trade deadline, there was like that's where we got Banton. We got Banton right around that time. And there's like been a lot of guys that move around that are like prospects on G League teams that like other NBA teams want to take a closer look at. And I just find that to be like just interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I always kind of hope that there would be more ways for us to find good players than just the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that there are far more great players out there than anyone could possibly have their eyes on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's only so many scouts, there's only so many coaches, there's only, like there's only so many ways to for them to catch their eye. And like the idea that like now you can be in the G League and catch someone's eye. Now you can play on internationally on any one of these like uh, professional leagues around the world and catch somebody's eye. College, junior college, like there's just a lot more ways now that we've been experimenting with that. And I think that that's probably good for basketball. And I wonder if that will lead to like there being a more international flavor to the players over the next 10, 15, 20
Well, it's
years.
already gotten very
Yeah.
international. And so, yeah, is that going to continue? And I also think the I feel like some of these players who maybe come from the G League or from other non-traditional places, um, sometimes I feel like a lot of time, or maybe sometimes, there's fit, like,
Yeah.
so like sometimes guys are brought in because they're just like so much raw talent that it's like you can't like pass up the idea of like what they might be able to do like someday, like Rayon Rupert. Like he just seems so naturally talented. What could that fit into? But and I have no idea whether or not this is why Reath is on the team, but Duop Reath has a skill set that the Blazers, or have in the past not had before, a center who
Mm.
can shoot threes. And I just wonder how much are these guys get opportunities because of fit, and because we've bolstered the scouting department, we can actually look for fit now as well as just raw talent and upside.
I feel like though that's not totally true. And just in that like I think that the Blazers have been looking for that center who can shoot threes for like a while now. Like we
Yeah.
saw that sort of with Zach Collins and we saw it with Myers Leonard and we saw like
Uh,
they've been looking for a guy like that. And so it's not the first time we've had a guy like that, but I feel like it's the first time we've had a guy like that that's also good at a lot of other stuff
mhm.
that we also wanted in the package. Cause I don't know, I just feel like we've been hunting for that stretch five for
Yeah.
some time now, like a decade maybe. And we just never found one that was like quite as good of a fit, and unlike some of the other ways, I guess,
Mhm.
to what we were looking for. But it also a little bit of it, I feel like it's hard to like ignore the fact that there's just a lot of chance involved here too, because like DeAndre Ayton's healthy this entire year. Reith doesn't get the same
Mhm.
opportunity that he
True.
did get. And we might not have been able to see whether that truly translated to the NBA game as opposed to just the G League game. Um, so there's like a little bit of luck that happened for us to be able to see so much of him and how well he was able to make that work.
Mhm. And Moses Brown getting injured, but I mean,
Yeah. Too, yeah, Moses too. But like,
yeah.
DeAndre Ayton, like I felt like we were going to come in and we were going to come in on him hot and they were going to play him a lot and figure out how to like make him a centerpiece of the team. But then he was injured.
Mhm.
And like for a while there, it was like we didn't have any centers except for Reith.
Yeah. He was it. And for a while, didn't we not have him? And it was just Jabari.
Yeah, Jabari, they're like, okay, you're gonna play small ball center and just crash the boards, I guess.
Robert Williams, we keep forgetting about him. We
Oh
need to
my
do
God,
him.
yeah.
We need to talk about him soon. Because I don't know anything about him. But let's wrap up talking about Reith. The only other random thing that I can say is we learned that he is an avid chess player.
Mm.
And I am looking that he did get his degree in 2018, and in fact won a student athlete award from LSU
Oh, for what?
just for being a student athlete,
Oh,
for an outstanding student athlete. There's that kind of a thing.
yeah.
Um,
That's
yeah, it was really wonderful hearing his story, and I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't help but compare it to Aiton's, and I'm not saying that Aiton's wasn't a wonderful story. It's just that they were two very different paths that people took to get to the NBA. And I just remember so many times reading about Aiton that like the goal was for him to be the number one pick and that he was going to be the number one pick. And I'm looking at him like, what did he get for being the number one pick? Except for outsized expectations that he was never gonna meet. You know what I mean? It was just like the marketing got him. I feel like I mean, obviously he's a good, very talented player with a large upside, but I feel like maybe like the marketing train took over with getting him
yeah.
to, to contributing towards him being that. And then what did he get except for just, I mean, that like when you look at so many number one picks, as soon as you're the number one pick, you're disappointing somebody, you know,
Yeah.
you're just going to disappoint. You can't win. I feel like you can't win unless you're like somebody extraordinary, like LeBron James or Victor Wembanyama. But like so many of these number one picks, it's just like,
There's a lot of burden that comes with
there's,
it.
yeah, burden. That's a good way to say it. So anyway,
Yeah.
I was fascinated by that the whole time I was learning about that. And I learned a lot about South Sudan, which I did not know.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I tend to agree about like high draft pick guys, like 1, 2, 3. There's a lot of attention put on you about like what you can and can't do and how good your career ends up being, which is like, you know, completely unfair. But like sometimes I think that the reason why people want you to be the number one pick is not even necessarily for you. It's like a lot of the times it's for the college program you came from or something. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Arizona loves to talk about how many number one picks have come out of Arizona, like DeAndre Ayton, like,
Mm-hmm.
and they get the untarnished aspect, the untarnished benefit of you being a number one pick, but don't carry any of the burden
That's
that you're going to carry.
such a good observation.
And it's
Yeah.
like, it feels really unfair. So the kinds of people who are ushering you forward, they're like pushing you forward. They're like, you're going to be the number one pick. It's going to be you. Like they are going to get just the pure benefit of knowing that they got you to be the number one pick without any of the burden of having to prove yourself or whatever. Like after that, they get to wash their hands of it and be like, that's on you to make the rest of the career work, then fit the narrative that and the expectations that people have of you. Anyway, just feels kind of icky. And I feel like I really feel for those guys. And I know it sounds really silly to feel for the guys who are number one picks, but like I think that they end up shouldering a lot of responsibility that they didn't necessarily bargain for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And some of which they don't have any control over.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely a benefit. We talked about it with Dame. There's a benefit of being able to like make a lot of those movements when you're anonymous, when
Mm-hmm.
you're not well known to the world, and you can make choices that are best for you. And we see that a little bit with Reath. Like you get to make choices that are just best for you at the time, and nobody's out there trying to influence you into like what helps their agenda because they're not as invested in you doing, being the number one pick or I don't know, going to a like a top tier college program or whatever. Like it just you get more freedom when you get to move like anonymously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, so
Very
yay,
interesting.
Reath.
We learned a lot.
We did. And I'm so excited to talk about some of the other guys, but I'll say I've been looking forward to talking about Reath for a long time because I have really, really, really wanted to see him get that contract. And I'm so glad we waited until he did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, should we wrap up with takes?
Yes, Tara. Tara, it's March 10th. What is your take?
Let DeAndre Ayton shoot threes. More threes.
Oh,
So a couple weeks ago, I was looking at his shot chart. So this is a few weeks old. A couple weeks ago, though, I was looking at his shot chart and I noticed from the 16 feet to the 3-point line, he was shooting 63%. Okay. It was only 12% of his total shots, so not a huge profile.
okay.
But from 16 feet to the 3-point line, he's shooting 63%. Take a step back. Might as well.
Yeah.
So I was so excited last night when he shot a three. And I don't want that to become now it's his bread and butter or whatever, but let it fly, buddy. I am all for it.
It's like how Nurk used to sprinkle him in.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't like his part of his like whole package. He wasn't like sitting there on the 3-point line constantly, but he would put him up
If you
there.
find yourself open, take it. because
Yeah.
he has money from that mid-range, and he's money from like that area pretty close to the 3 point. I know there's a big difference between 16 feet and like outside the 3 point line,
Yeah.
but like he's a good shooter. He has
Yes.
good, wonderful shooting instincts. So
Yes.
might as well, if you're open, let it fly.
His shooting range, not necessarily what his shot looks like, but like the range that he shoots well from reminds me a lot of LaMarcus Aldridge. He has
Mm.
some of the same kind of
Mhm.
like this is like the same spots that he
Yeah,
likes and he's very successful from.
yeah, yeah. I
I'm
mean,
I'm with it. I'm with
he's
you.
he's still young enough that he could totally every year add a little bit more, add a little bit more, and end up when he's maybe, outsized, or out at when he's older and he's out athletic, he might be able to outshoot.
Yeah, like shooting sticks around a lot longer than some of those like kind of younger guy like
Mhm.
athleticism.
Yeah, and since he's going to listen to this podcast and knows that we're out on dunks now, and
Right.
that he's not going on any no more 5 dunk night, like what is this? It's the Wild West. We're just out dunking everything. Gentle layups and 3 point shots.
Yeah, with decorum.
Yes. I hope people are reading into the sarcasm and the joking into this. That I'm Some people might be really upset, but anyway, go ahead. What's your take?
Okay, so this is my take. And I came across this as I was trying to like explain to my daughter more about basketball because we've been to the game and I had to talk to her about a lot of things like, oh, like this is a timeout. This is what, when you're on defense, this is what happens. When you're on offense, this is what happens. Like these are kind of some of the rules. You have to dribble the ball, yada, yada, yada. So here's my take. It's the marriage of this exercise of explaining basketball to my daughter and also seeing the people complain about how the NBA doesn't play defense anymore. Because we've been seeing these games with like incredibly high scores this season, and everybody's talking about like, oh, like defense is dead, like it's offense, 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 like nobody's even bothering anymore. And it's like also a little bit like I think fueled by like what happens in the All-Star game where literally nobody plays defense.
Yeah. Why do
But
even people act like that's a real game? I don't know.
I
Sorry. Go
don't
ahead.
know. So anyway, my take is this. The reason why the NBA has moved away from defense is because the rules make it not worth it. The rules are it's too hard. It's too hard to play good defense and not get called for fouls. So I feel like now what I see is I see guys that try their best to work within these like rules that are like too hard to explain to a 7-year-old. And they're just like, I will use my fouls judiciously. That's
Mhm.
what I feel like guys do now. And I don't know if they like meant for the game to be this way, but anyway, that's my take is that the rules for defense, for playing good defense without fouling are too hard to follow. That's why they don't do it anymore.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
I don't think you're alone in that. I think there's a lot of people that feel that way.
They're like, oh, you have the 3 point line. The floor is huge now. And also, you can't close out the way you used to do it because you might be in a guy's landing space. Also, like where you initiate contact and how the contact is initiated and what's a legal guarding position. It's too hard now. Everyone's too fast and too athletic, and the floor is too big. It's not worth like teams getting really good at defense anymore. Like, there's not going to be any more of those like Memphis Grizzlies, like, what do they call it? Like the grindhouse or whatever.
The
Remember
grit and
the
grind.
Yes, the grit and grind guys. Those guys, like those, like there's not going to be 82-point wins anymore. Like that's not worth it.
Mhm. So would a another way to say this take is that the defensive rules you should be able to explain to a 7-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I love it.
I would love for that to be I can't even explain it to an adult, to be honest, using bigger words and more like complex like language. So it's
I think it would be easier on defenders if it was like simplified. I mean, what you're saying, I think what you're saying is there are so many rules that have been put in place to protect the person playing offense that the defender now has to know and keep track of all of that stuff, and their hands are really tied and they can't do the things that they've always been able to do to play deep. You can't do anything when you're trying to play defense anymore except for stand in front of somebody and wave your arms, and pretty soon that's going to be illegal too.
right, but you got to wave them in a certain way
Yeah.
and they have to be straight up
You have to
and
wave them like the what do you call it? The Rose Festival wave,
oh
elbow,
yeah.
wrist,
Yeah,
or like
yeah,
one
yeah.
like the royal wave where you go back and forth showing your hands and your palms.
I mean, something like that. I just feel like so many things now are illegal on defense,
Mhm.
or they're only situationally legal that it's not worth trying to figure it out because you're making split-second decisions all the time. And we're like, I gotta be honest right now, when I see a charge,
Oh, I can't tell.
I can't tell anymore because they're like, oh, well, when they go back to the replay, technically his heel wasn't down. And I'm
And
like, the
like we
whole
have to do
body
that
was there.
every single time. It's just yeah.
Yeah, and like they're like, oh well, the offensive player initiated contact, but he initiated contact when this guy was in this position, and I'm like, I don't know anything anymore. Like, just tell me when it's over, and I'll pay attention when you're done explaining this and reviewing this from 18 different angles. And by the way, if you need to review something from 18 different angles before you can figure out whether something is the call or not, maybe the rules are too complicated.
Yes. Here, here. I think that's a great take.
But also gentle layups.
Mhm.
Gentle, soft, elegant layups. They're also great.
Elegance. This
Yeah.
that's what we're looking for. We just want our team to be elegant.
Yes.
We want them to be the most elegant team in the league. And you know what? I bet they can do it.
We do have a chill team and
So why not be chill and elegant?
right.
I think
You
they go
can
together.
you can streak like Banton across the floor like a gazelle.
Yes. Yeah, chill and chill and elegant instead of grit and grind. Our team's chill and elegant.
That's right.
All right,
That's
the
right.
chill and elegant Portland Trailblazers. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our podcast. Rose, thank you so much for joining me today. Sorry we missed last week. Maybe we'll next week. We don't know. This is the year that we are giving ourselves the freedom to not like stress out our whole lives over making sure we get a podcast made. So thank you for everybody who sticks with us, even if we're not as regular as we maybe have been in the past, or maybe we'll be in the future. But for now, we are just having a good time watching the Blazers and talking about it when we get the chance to do it. So thank you everybody for listening. Is there anything else you want to add today, Rose?
No, just everybody get some rest tonight because Monday is going to feel
Oh.
hard missing that hour.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.